Hello and welcome back to the Tea on the Tea Trans in Conversation. My name is Dr. Tobi Evans. My pronouns are they, them. And as we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're filming today on the lands of the Bunurong, Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Our guest tonight is Dr. David Azul, who is a lecturer in speech pathology at Trobe University. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, first off, what are your gender pronouns and what is your star sign?
My gender pronouns are they, them. And my star sign, I can't say it in English.
Oh, okay. Yes. So we had a chat this week and you told me you didn't know your star sign.
Yes.
And you just don't know it in English now.
Yeah. In German it would be called Schütze.
Schütze. Okay. So
the shooting person.
Okay. Well, I will make a mental note to myself to research this. Firstly, tell me a bit about you.
I'm a German citizen who's migrated to Australia in 2005. I'm a parent of a lovely child and also I work. And I do that at Trobe University in Bendigo. And I work as a lecturer and researcher. Yeah, meanwhile, I think I could also say I'm a writer.
Why you think you could also say it?
Oh, yeah, it's been really interesting because I did my PhD in the humanities. And this is where I learned that, writing is a thing.
Yeah.
And you may be called a writer when you do it.
Yeah. Yes, they do bestow that title on us.
Yeah. And I guess it's again something, the difference between German language and English. The German word for writer would be Schriftsteller, which is, more along like an author. So it's more used in the sense of published author.
Yeah.
So I was very hesitant to claim anything like that. But meanwhile, all things writing I really enjoy.
I'd love to hear a bit about your gender journey.
As a kid, I basically spent my life as a boy. It wasn't too difficult to do that. My parents were like very, accepting of all of this. And also, my friends, difficulties I had in my primary school because I was a Catholic primary school. And it was very gender binary. And so I was grouped with the girls and had to do all of the things I really didn't want to do. And was a big battle to be allowed to play soccer with the boys at recess and things like that. So I think that was a really difficult time, and it got a little bit better at secondary school because there wasn't sort of this distinction made so strongly, so you could have physical education together with the boys or things like that. But interestingly, at secondary school, I did not know anyone who was gay or gender diverse, or I hadn't heard anything about, what that even means. And so it was a real, journey to try and get to know things. And the film that actually helped me making better sense of what was going on for me, and also thinking about, okay, these are the things I could do. It's called Gendernauts. I don't know what Gendernauts.
Okay.
Yeah, and interestingly, it's a German filmmaker, Monika Treut, who it's basically a documentary of people in San Francisco. And so they were talking about taking testosterone, and I really identified with the people that were filmed there and contributed to it. Among others, also Susan Stryker. So that was
we
really
love
cool.
Susan Stryker.
Yeah. And it was from then on that I thought, okay, I think Gendernauts is an excellent term, like astronaut, right?
Yeah.
And I can really identify with that. And I want to try it. And so this is then when I started, trying to navigate the medical system. And
is this in Germany still?
In Germany, yeah. And it's still, or at that time, everything was very regulated. So I had to see 2 psychiatrists to examine me. And this is not only for access to medical procedures, but also for changing your name.
Wow.
So you had to have these reports from the psychiatrist to say, yeah, we do believe this person really identifies as male. So, I mean, no way you could say, oh, I'm non-binary, or, have any doubts about wanting to change from the one to the other. And yeah, so that was totally intimidating with the psychiatrist. Then you had to go to court.
Do you mind if I just pause and ask how old you are at this point?
Oh, well, I was 30.
Okay. Yeah. So quite young to be like, need to go to court, scary, need to see 2 psychiatrists, scary. Like it's a lot for a young person.
It was really stressful. And it also continued to be stressful, also with the medical intervention. So I started taking testosterone, was treated by an endocrinologist who had these ideas, you're only really trans if you want it all. So you were not allowed to ask a question like, do I really need a hysterectomy? He was seriously answering, if you ask that question, then I'm not really sure I should give you any more testosterone because you're not really committed, or, you're not really identifying as male, or things like that. Yeah, so quite different to here, because in Germany, everything is paid for. So, I mean, that is like a great thing in a way. But they, at the time, they were really encouraging people to do all of the surgeries and, follow through with it all. And I did not want that, because I did have concerns about so my body and, what will happen to it. Meanwhile, which is very exciting for me, in Germany, they're thinking about changing the law. And already the requirement to be made infertile in order to be able to change the gender marker. Well, no, that was abolished, I think, in 2013. They sort of realized they call it unconstitutional now. Yeah. But at the time, I had to go through it.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, makes me also really sad that I sort of played along with that. But I think I didn't imagine that would ever change. And also the whole thing with identification documents and things like that. That was a little bit stressful, but meanwhile, they are thinking about changing what is called the transsexuals law, which was, I think, first invented in 1980 or something, and is still valid till today. But now they want to change it, and I think this is truly amazing for Germany, to a self-determination law, where, there won't be any psychiatric examinations anymore, no courts involved. It's all a question of, giving the people the right to, decide these things for themselves.
Amazing. And is that for like anything, or is that like just for like name changes, or are they just like, do whatever you want, it's your body?
Probably have to investigate some more. I'm sort of assuming it's for everything.
And how about now? How are gender things now for you?
I think I've changed my position quite a bit, in the sense of I don't accept gender as a structure anymore. I rather think of it as something I don't need, which is, of course, difficult because many other people, or most other people, probably think that we need gender desperately. But so I see it more like from a critical perspective. And I've also dedicated some of my research to actually, exploring what is that thing? It's actually not a thing. It's just this fantasy that we can divide people up into types, and that fundamentally there are only 2 types. And meanwhile, people are thinking, oh, maybe there aren't 2 types, maybe there are more types.
Maybe there's 3. We'll stop it. Cut it off there.
Exactly. And so I find that all like really surprising, that this is something that this story keep being told and over again from different perspectives. And of course, I mean, it's predominantly in the health sciences and also speech pathology, my profession. It's such a conservative perspective, and to this day, when I submit articles to speech pathology journals, sometimes the editors tell me off for misrepresenting gender.
No.
And sort of tell me, the World Health Organization says this is what it is. We've got sex and we've got gender. How dare you, calling both of them gender? And how dare you calling both of them like a social construction or, a fantasy? I mean, I don't dare putting fantasy in because that probably means that the article will be rejected immediately. But yeah, so I had to work for many years to sort of get the theoretical background that allows me now to challenge these ideas and to also speak back to editors like that, and to basically overwhelm them with, I am drawing on Judith Butler, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I don't know if you find this, but I feel like it's a really valuable and unique weapon, like as a trans person, to have expertise in gender. Because when someone says something nonsense, you're like, let me whip out my like critical, and you have that authority and I guess like language to be like, no. Like, so let's kind of focus on that kind of world for you. So starting at the very start, what is speech pathology?
Unfortunately, it's a profession that's called that in English, which sort of has the pathologization in the name, and I find it really difficult to even admit this is my profession. But there is a little bit of progress in terms of people, challenging the name also. So, well, it's an allied health discipline, so it's, deeply located within the health sciences and also within the, natural sciences, probably very much more than social sciences, certainly not humanities.
And so by natural sciences, you mean things like math, science, medicine, that?
Yeah, and so people use physics, for instance, to experiment with the vocal mechanism to try and work out how vocal exercises might work. And then you get, those articles where you have to try and understand it all. So, I mean, some parts of speech pathology are very scientific in that sense. But I think it's still probably the predominant move, to be recognized as a proper science, as health sciences. And there's very little interest in getting involved with, say, humanities theories or creative practice for that matter. And, exploring ways of writing or representation or things like that. It's all very much from the perspective of there is a truth about the world and we know it because we are scientists. And that's also what I'm expected to teach to my students. But okay, I mean, it's not that everything is bad about speech pathology, certainly not, because it's a profession that is really focused on supporting people with their communication and also with their swallowing. And so there are many, conditions people might experience in their life that make it really hard to speak or to read or to write or to understand. And so in that sense, I mean, that's certainly, a goal of the profession I can identify with. So it's more, from my perspective, a question of how do we do that? And particular in terms of how do we account for diversity among human beings? And up to this day, I think speech pathology has done a very poor job. But in Australia, and that is really special, the Professional Association has, for instance, apologized to First Nations people for the mistreatment in the past.
Wow, that's good.
And there's now a real move to making the profession more culturally responsive. And since I heard that, and it was only, it happened in the last 2 years, but the code of ethics has changed, the professional standards have changed. And so since then, I really have hope for the profession that, there's also sort of the structural and organizational support to move in a different direction. And what really moved me that in the code of ethics, the word kindness is used in relation to the practitioners. So yeah, we treat our clients with kindness. That has made a huge difference for me in terms of, sort of thinking, okay, I'm okay with being called a speech pathologist and making a contribution to moving the profession into a more culturally responsive perspective, and also really advocating for including exciting theories that have been around for decades
in other areas.
And sort of applying them to the practice and also to research.
I got goosebumps when you said that. I got goosebumps when you said like the word kindness is in the code of ethics. Like, go speech pathologists, but also like go you specifically. Like, I love that you're like out there being like, speech pathology is like doing its thing, and then you're out here being like, let's make it better, let's make it inclusive. Delicious. What drew you to speech pathology to start off with?
I can probably start with what made me not choose speech pathologist in the first instance, which was that my mother was practicing speech pathologist. And I certainly did not want to do anything, my parents engaged in. But yeah, I mean, if I'm very honest, I've always been really interested in communication and languages. And I think at the time when I was thinking about, what to do, I didn't really see a lot of options, what I could be doing with that interest in Germany at the time, because I don't think there are any communication departments really in Germany. So, I mean, the, academic structure is a little bit different. And so I sort of thought, okay, if I'm interested in languages, the only thing I can do is say, become a teacher and teach, say, English at a secondary school. And I so did not want to do that. And so, I tried studying environmental sciences, but then I realized, oh my God, I can't do maths, I can't do physics, I can't do chemistry. So that was all. That was a big disaster. And but then I sort of thought, okay, yes, my mother is a speech pathologist, but so what? And I went on a placement and saw people working with people, and I thought, yeah, why not? I mean, it was something practical also. I really enjoyed that. And I ended up becoming really passionate about it, but also being confronted sort of with those limitations. And then, when I was doing my PhD in the humanities, I was really not planning to go back to speech pathology, but I did, and it had a lot to do with, being having a job there, or having been offered a job. And then it's sort of, since then, it's been sort of this decision, well, yes, I could make a contribution to change the profession. And ideally, I do that from within, rather than, position myself, say, in the humanities, and then trying to interact with, speech pathology. They've always been very good at excluding whatever they thought wasn't relevant. But as a speech pathologist myself, I'm in a different position. And
you speak their language.
Yes. It's hard to do it because, yes, I faced a lot of rejection. Meanwhile, it's become a little bit easier because, I've been more successful in publishing things, and particularly also in the field of, gender diversity, to, basically say openly, which also has been a difficult thing, well, this is also my lived experience. So, I'm writing partly from within also the client perspective. So, yeah, now that this is okay and even maybe encouraged to a certain degree, it's very helpful.
So what does your research focus on at the moment?
I'm actually still working on interviews I did as part of my master's research in Germany, where I spoke with 14 trans masculine people just about voice and communication and well-being, which now ends up to be my research topic, and it has been for a very long time. And so, but I'm now approaching those interviews from a different perspective, from the perspective of, having read about, say, minority stress, having read about discussions of identity and, calling it rather sociocultural positioning, and then thinking about, okay, so who has the agency in all of that? Who decides whether someone ends up being gendered male or female or trans or whatever. And yeah, this is so exciting. And I think I'm pretty much the only person, maybe even in the world,
I would believe that, sadly.
who does that. And yeah, that's what I'm currently doing. I'm looking at those interviews and see how people are talking about, well, how do they position themselves in their everyday lives? How are they positioned by others? And, which practices are sort of helpful for them, which ones are not so helpful. And then to sort of draw a conclusion and say, okay, so that's what speech pathologists should be doing. They should be supporting people with, developing more of those resources, and also encouraging other people in case whatever they're doing is helpful, and, seeing what can be done about the barriers. And the barriers have a lot to do not with the, gender diverse person themselves, but with their environment. And so then, the outcome will always be, well, we have to do advocacy work. We have to, look at the laws that apply and, what happens with identification documents. Of course, they contribute to the communication of gender. And they are, a massive stress factor. And, I then say to speech pathology, we can no longer afford to say, oh, this is only for sociology, has nothing to do with us. Of course it has to do with us, because it has to do with the people who come and see us. Yeah, so, and I find that really also intellectually very stimulating. And then also the question of, how do I write it in a way that I don't overwhelm, the speech pathology readership with theories they've never heard of. And so, yeah, I have to take it really slowly. But it's great
so
because
one crumb at a time.
Yeah. I don't know how many publications I've now written on the basis of this master's research. And there, again, it becomes really interesting because I basically do some of the data analysis now, 20 years after data collection. And so the whole question of, has anything changed in Germany meanwhile, or will it change? And what would be the implication for the results? Yeah, so that's really interesting.
Thank you so much for the work that you do. Like it's incredible that you're like it's incredible and kind of awful that you're the only person researching it, but also amazing that you're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to like milk it for all of the kind of crumbs that I can slowly kind of build up. That's amazing. So what's it like being a trans person researching trans people? Like, I know when I've been a professional trans, it's fabulous, but it can also be quite challenging. So what's that been like for you?
It's been really quite a development, because for a very long time, I basically wasn't open about the fact that I was trans myself. More like sort of in my research environment, but not even with clients. Yes. So yeah, I found that really difficult to find a way of making sure that people knew that, I sort of understood them in a particular way because of shared lived experience. And so, well, on the one hand, that was good. But on the other hand, also, because I did some, advocacy work in Germany and, running a group for trans people in the town where I lived. And I just became aware of, all of those different ideas of what it means to be trans. And also, the risk and what also really happened in that group of people, rejecting each other for not being trans enough or being, trans in a way some people thought you shouldn't be trans.
Yep.
And so I was really bruised from that experience and basically thought, nah, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. And was even thinking, oh, maybe I'm not even interested in continuing any advocacy or, doing research, because I found it so stressful, because it was really, very aggressive, very devaluing other people. Now I understand it a little bit better because I guess it comes from a place of insecurity, anxiety, being also traumatized by, responses other people have given to particular, trans people or ways of being trans. And certainly also in the context of all of this psychiatric examination system, which really forces people to, present in a particular way. And so if you're a trans woman, you cannot afford not to shave. You totally have to do it. And also, whatever. And as a trans masculine person, you have to have testosterone. You must have chest surgery. You must be a bodybuilder or go to the gym and all of these things. So I think there's a lot of relationship between the structures that were imposed on people at the time, and I think continue to be imposed. I found it quite difficult for a while. Meanwhile, and probably has a lot to do with what you mentioned before, this theoretical background and understanding a little bit more all of the different ways one can think about gender. And also sort of being aware, well, trans people aren't better people than others, like from an ethical perspective, right? They also just have to manage their life. And no, we cannot always be kind to others, even if they are sort of in the same cultural subgroup. And so I find it a little bit easier, but probably still a little bit hesitant to do as much as I could to support other trans people. So it's a little bit easier for me to do that, sort of as part of my work, and basically also advocating for trans people at the university, where it's still sort of this system of gender equity and dividing up the workforce into male and female, where I often think, wow, it's such a slap in the face, that you're basically told, well, you're not counted, you're not part of staff here. So that's a little bit more what I'm doing, but I think eventually I would love to, maybe also make a wider contribution, because I think it's really needed. And I feel very privileged that I'm in the position of having been able to do research and having had access to all of this work other people have done, and so. And also having been supported by the German health system to cover, the worst of my medical fees at the time when I was still in Germany. It's a very different situation here.
I think it's really interesting that you've kind of, I guess, slowly been more open, but kind of focused that on quite targeted areas. And there's, as you said, some areas you're like more comfortable being like, this is my experience and my research, so do this, whereas other places you're like, not yet, maybe in the future. I think that's, that's the best way one can do it, just to kind of be like, where is it working for me right now? Where is it not? So something else that you mentioned when we were talking earlier in the week was that you've not only been more open about gender stuff, but also about mental health stuff. So I'd love to kind of hear a bit about what that process of kind of being more open about, your experiences in mental health has been like.
It's been an even slower process, and I think also probably for myself, particularly in the context of work. So I like to think of myself as a very capable and yeah, of course I can do this, and a situation at the universities doesn't really get better, and covering all of the workload and things like that. And so very recently I understood how wearing myself down by constantly pretending everything is fine. And so I noticed very much more how, even though I'm, have worked with the whole gender system for quite some time, I am still exposed to this minority stress. And it, reinforces for me over and over again, like, yes, I have to, do a lot of work and be very patient with other people, and, tell them, oh, what you just did, misgendering me, is really painful for me, and then giving them all of the time in the world to change that. Really to basically not pretend that I'm this super gender diverse person who isn't affected by any of that, and only some end up needing psychological care. And I mean, I've been in mental health treatment for a very long time. Also there, I think I can make a real contribution to changing the way the world, or people in general, think about people with mental health issues. Not only in relation to gender diversity, where I mean, again, it needed I don't know how many decades to gradually move gender diversity out of this is a mental illness category to making it a question of diversity, and it's still not achieved really in that sense. So partly about this, so gender diverse people, yes, they might experience mental health issues, but this is not something that is within us. We're not born with
stress.
Stress, or some people even think it's a form of psychosis because we cannot identify with the gender that's been imposed on us at birth. So to say this is different, no, we can have a good life, but we are also still affected by all of that. So that will be the thing in relation to gender diversity, but also increasingly, I mean, I've become really interested in other aspects of sociocultural positioning, and ability and disability has become a really important part for me there. And yeah, I find it very problematic the way people who are living with mental illness are represented in some places, and how people also tend to say, oh, that has nothing to do with me because these are like the crazy people, but rather to say, yes, I have to work on my mental health in order to be able to live the best possible life. It doesn't prevent me from, say, being a lecturer at the university, but sometimes I will be on sick leave. And then I need to access services that help me. And so, I mean, I would think at the institutional level, that's quite difficult because employers don't like it.
How dare you be human?
Exactly. But then again, so with the work with my students, because unfortunately there are many who experience a lot of mental health concerns while they're studying, to be able to be open about that, and to also sort of share with them, like, a little bit, I know where you're coming from, because I'm also, say, working with anxiety and things like that. And so, and then to sort of normalize it a little bit more in the sense of, well, having mental health issues does not mean you can't be a speech pathologist. It does not mean that you can't work with other people. On the contrary, it's even, it has this silver lining because, it means you're sort of forced to self-reflect and to think about, oh, what do I need for self-care? And I think particular for clinicians, this is so important.
Yeah.
And also to realize, wow, I've got issues too,
I'm a person as well.
Yes, I'm a person. I might need medication. I might need to see a counselor. I might have to go to hospitals sometimes. But all of that doesn't mean anything about, my value or anything. And I think that also helps a lot when working with other people.
Yes.
To sort of destabilize this clinician-client binary where the clinician is sort of always expected to be well in every sense. And, in our case also to have no problems communicating, never be, afraid of speaking, in public or something like that. And so I think it's very helpful to be open about that and also to give people hope that, yes, there are things they can do, but sometimes it takes a very long time. I've been working on my mental health for decades and it's not done. I mean, I don't believe it'll ever be done in a way. So it's more sort of self-care has become a very important part of my life and even has become my values. So I learned about mindfulness and self-compassion, and I'm sort of trying to have these values inform whatever I do. And so partly I use it for myself, but also I try and use it for whenever I relate to other people. And so, yeah, it's become another passion.
Yeah. And I really get that energy from you. I really feel that kind of kindness and self-compassion just radiating out of you, which is really lovely to be interacting with. And I also love that, idea of when you are honest about what's going on for you, it just opens up kind of possibilities and worlds for other people because they can be oh, you can be a very amazing, sexy speech pathologist and have mental health stuff going on. You can do both. And I think that's so important and so powerful. Is there any part of your life where you're not doing good? You're just everything you touch, you're just making the world a better place.
It's been quite a development, and it hasn't been easy at all. And there were many moments when I, thought, nah, I just can't do it. It's all too tough. I can't deal with any more rejection or things like that. So, but I mean, I would say, and sometimes people ask the same question, I wouldn't really want to change anything, really. Because also the experiences of not being understood by others, or that others say, nah, we don't want you in our space because it's sort of too challenging. Also those experiences, I mean, they of course shape the sort of skills I have to develop and had to develop. And then also the way in which I approach certain things, and particular with the writing and trying to be published in journals, that was a lot of important learning, and also sort of to understand some rejections may have more to do with, wow, I don't understand what this person is talking about because I don't have that background, or wow, this is really challenging. This makes me feel really uncomfortable. What can I do to get rid of it and to, hold it away from, myself as a person, or, from an organization or whatever it is. And I think I understand that now a little bit better, that I've, taken a closer look at what I personally find very challenging. And of course, I'm in the same boat.
So we need to start wrapping up now.
Yeah.
So is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you're just dying for us to talk about?
Not in 5 minutes.
That's fair. That's fair. And my last question is, what is bringing you joy at the moment in your life?
Spending time with my child, creating jigsaw puzzles.
You make jigsaw puzzles.
Oh well, I use photos I've taken and then have them turned into jigsaw puzzles. For me, it's sort of working on representation, because you've got the thing I took the photo of, and then the photography, and then turn it into the puzzle, and then have to build it again. It's a way for me to be creative and combine it with problem solving, and also experiment with different ways of doing that. And I find it very calming.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Our guest for tonight was Dr. David Azul, who is a lecturer in speech pathology at Trobe University. My name is Dr. Tobi Evans, and you've been listening to the T on the T Trans in Conversation. Thanks and good night.